40% of Americans said they had COVID. Those were the statistics. And I went home and I was looking around online at some things and found an update on that. 52% of Americans now say they've contracted the virus, including, if you want to break it down politically, that's how deep dive they're going on these things. How many Republicans had it versus Democrats? Because that's how stupid we've gotten. I'm not even going to get into that part of this poll. But apparently 52% of Americans say they have actually had COVID at this point. 48% have been lucky and have not yet had to deal with it. And it doesn't seem to matter at this point whether you've been vaccinated, boosted, had it before, you can still get it again. Doesn't seem like anything's going to stop this thing. Justin Simmons joins us, CEO and founder of My Labs Direct, with us on News Talk 820 WBAP. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Ernie. Good morning.
I bet you have been busy for the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have. It's been certainly a pivot, our business being core to, blood diagnostic testing, and then really just had to adapt and start this COVID testing stuff. So it has been absolutely crazy.
One thing that has been surprising is the evolution of the tests. In the beginning, nobody seemed to know anything or what to do or how to do it. And now we seem to at least be able to identify when we have the disease.
Yeah, that's right. We've always kind of remained true to the molecular PCR type of testing, just due to sensitivity, accuracy, and otherwise. But yeah, we've seen certainly a lot of innovation, and as we all know, the home testing, and hopeful to say that those have become more and more accurate as time has gone on. So lots of changes. Do
you guys see the statistical information as far as, well, here's somebody who's being tested, they've been boosted, here's somebody who hasn't been boosted, and here's somebody who's had it before and hasn't had it before? Because I hear a lot of talk about antibodies, and I don't know if we've ever really gotten a clear picture on what determines what's going to protect you the most.
I think that's a great point. Something that we advocate here at My Labs Direct. We actually offer total and IgG antibody testing for that reason, to give people a general sense of titer values and what's going on with them, to hopefully guide and help them make better decisions. The problem is, a lot of the data that we get from the antibody test up to this point, there hasn't been a lot of research or supported research around what does a titer value mean in fact, and how can that be used to determine whether I get a booster or get a vaccination in the first place. So again, I think still really valuable information that I personally promote and encourage folks to get that information on deck.
Yeah, I've been curious. I got the boost 3 months ago, and it seems like, just based on the stories we read about these things, that you've got about 3 good months, and then it starts to fade away at that point. And I wonder if I have any protection. I've been one of the 48%. I have yet to get COVID, knock on wood. I've been lucky. I don't know why, because usually when something's going around, I always catch it. But I would be curious to know my antibody status.
Well, you got to go to mylabsdirect.com. We'll get you taken care of.
Yeah. Is it something that's going to make a difference in terms of, okay, I find out I have this many antibodies. Is that something that's really, the connection between that and catching COVID? Is that known at this point?
No, we're still pretty early in that process. But there again, being able to evaluate maybe a titer value that shows us kind of the amount of antibody maybe in a given specimen. But there again, to correlate that to protection or immunity is still something that's in development from a research perspective. So, there's a lot more to come on that. And I think something that we'd be well served in continuing to research.
I sent off for those government tests that they mailed out a few months ago, and I was surprised. I actually didn't expect to see them till summer because, it's a government operation, and they things get bogged down in the bureaucracy, but I actually got them. But those are the quickie tests. What is the difference between the quickie and the more long-term test?
Really just looking at antigen proteins versus with the PCR test, we're actually breaking down the specimen to look at the viral RNA. So a much more accurate yet more hands-on and involved process. The problem I see or saw at the time we were doing the antigen or the rapid tests is that in most cases you have to have a pretty significant viral load for those to detect you as positive. And so timing was of essence when taking that test, whereas the PCR method is obviously, I believe, more accurate at early stages and able to detect you in the early stages of virus. And so, again, something that we've always really advocated and been a proponent of is the PCR side of things.
Can you tell which strain of COVID people have? It seems like every week there's a new variant. There's still another one, and I keep reading that we're probably going to get hit with a wave of COVID possibly as early as next week or the week after.
We think maybe in June is where we start to see another surge. What we're seeing is a subvariant of Omicron, BA2 is as it's referred. The difficulty with this variant is that, so generally speaking, we can detect a variant by evaluating what's called an S drop or a spike protein drop on a regular PCR test. Mm-hmm. This variant, as it's called stealth variant, does not show an S drop, so it's hard to determine what variant it is. To really delve into understanding what specific variant, it takes another level of what's called genetic sequencing, where we actually look at the sample itself and identify it that way. Well, that's a pretty expensive and time-consuming process in and of itself. So what we will do is, with our positives, is routinely batch those up and then send them off to Baylor College of Medicine down in Houston, and they'll do those evaluation studies for us to determine what we're seeing in terms of propensity of specific variants and otherwise. But the test does not show you exactly what variant, no. And again, concern with this BA2 is that we can't see if it is the variant itself without genetic sequencing.
Justin, is the virus seemingly getting smarter to survive?
I think that kind of, it goes without saying that that's its job, is to try to mutate and survive. Fortunately, I think with vaccination rates increasing and folks having had the virus is helping, like we saw in this last Omicron wave, a surge and then an immediate drop. And I think it's largely based on those factors, as well as better access to testing and things of that nature. Now, I think the thing we have to keep our eye on this next surge is, congressional funding for testing, as they're starting to suspend those programs for non-insured. And I think insured patients keeping an eye on the fact that I think now you're going to start seeing some out-of-pocket cost, in other words, by your insurance company. I think we just exhausted the budget, so that's going to be interesting to try to watch here over this next wave.
I would imagine, especially if it becomes a massive wave, that they'll step up, they'll throw more money at it. That's just what they do. So I cannot imagine they'd leave anybody out in the cold, because they seem to love spending that cash. So
yeah, absolutely. It'll come down to the supply, and without, I think, the manufacturing side, the implications there is being able to manufacture reagents, consumables, rapid tests. It's easier to do so and to create that manufacturing output if you have a secured contract, whereas if those start going away, we may see a shortage in supply just from the manufacturing side. So I've been just kind of keeping my eye on those factors as well. The supply chain factors have been an issue we've contended with really from the outset, but it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Justin Simmons, CEO and founder of My Labs Direct. Website?
MyLabsDirect.com, based right here in Plano, Texas.
All right, simple enough. Justin Simmons, thanks so much for coming on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Thank you, Ernie. God bless.